Hey folks, how's it going? Hope everybody's staying warm this morning. On Sunday between 2:39 a.m. and 7:21 p.m. Local time, there were more attacks on electrical substations in Washington State. Now, there have been a few different reports come out about this from different news sources. Two of them, curiously, are reporting these as burglars breaking in, but the rest of them, the details given indicate that when authorities have arrived, they found evidence where somebody broke in through the fence, an entry point in the fence that was opened up, and while nothing was taken, there was a lot of vandalism done that was damaged the stations, including one that unintentional fire was set to damage the station. Now, there were about 14,000 people lost power due to this, due to these attacks. There's no lead right now on who performed the attacks, whether they were coordinated or whether they were coincidental. But this happens at a time when the grid is already dealing with rolling blackouts and requests from multiple power companies and energy grids to reduce energy consumption, all due to the really frigid temperatures that everybody's facing. We've had a lot of snow, a lot of ice, extreme drops in temperature. So people are ramping up their furnaces and their heat to try to stay warm, in addition to all the wind gusts that are bringing down trees and limbs on the power lines. So this is already a difficult time for the grid because of more damage being done to the grid from the storm, plus the increased demand for power. And these attacks come at like the worst possible time, when it's more dangerous for anybody to be without power than at any other time. Now, whether this is connected with the previous attacks in Washington and Oregon or the attacks in North Carolina, they haven't said. I would be inclined to believe that, while maybe not performed by the same group, possibly performed for the same reasons. This is starting to show a trend, a pattern here, that shows us that somebody out there, whether this is a nationwide group working in concert, or whether it's smaller groups taking advantage of the opportunities that they see, it does show that regardless of which of these is true, there are people out there willing to attack the grid and cut people off from the grid, from their power, from their heat, when not only the grid is most vulnerable, but when people are most vulnerable. Now, what the end game for this is, what their goals are, it's anybody's guessing game at this point. Aside from causing chaos, it's hard to say. There could be a wide variety of motivations for this. Two of the attacks in Washington yesterday morning were at Tacoma Public Utilities, and two were at the Puget Sound Energy Station. This is a trend that we've seen develop, and one that we may see continue on more in the future. This is a perfect example of why we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared to deal without systems of support. You need to be able to manage without power, without water, without access to a grocery store. If you're locked down in your home, what have you, you need to be able to provide for yourself and your family on your own without assistance from the government for an undetermined amount of time. Now, these 14,000 people affected by this recent attack, power was restored to them within the day. It was several hours later, but it was restored within the day. However, I've been seeing a lot of chatter, particularly in my local area. People are losing their tempers with the power companies. They're getting really upset about being without power. They're demanding answers. They're demanding to have their power restored. And it just goes to show that a lot of people out there aren't looking to be responsible for their own well-being. They're looking for somebody else to be responsible. Now, I understand some of the comments I've seen where you're paying for a service and you expect that service to be provided. But you also have to be prepared for the fact that things come up. Storms happen. Trees come down in storms. Lines get broken in storms. In a severe storm like we're having this weekend, demand spikes, and that puts a strain on an already fragile system. And true, the company is responsible for providing the service they pay for. They are responsible for investing in the grid in their respective areas to make sure that it can handle the load demand. But as individuals, it's incumbent upon us to be responsible for our own well-being. If we're not able to get power, we should be able to provide whatever power needs we require on our own. We should be able to go a week or two without power without complaining like spoiled brats. And I hate to put it like that. I hate to be that way. But a lot of the chatter I've seen in my local community online about the grids being down, I'm seeing a lot of really spoiled people complaining about they can't do this or they can't do that because the grid is down and it's ridiculous. Well, you knew this storm was coming. You had time to prepare. You had time to go out and get a generator just in case. You had time to get fuel for that generator. Everybody's been wanting to cut back on the use of fossil fuels, but right now in Texas, they're actually having to ease restrictions so that they can use not only natural gas, but oil to burn to produce electricity. Oil was restricted because it was a dirtier fuel source and they didn't want to cause any more pollution. But in times like this, they have to ease that restriction and use that dirtier fuel to produce electricity just to provide for the demand that's being felt right now. Because a lot of Texas, just like a lot of Georgia right now, they reach temperatures of 1 degree. And that's not including the wind chill. That's the base temperature. So we see these things coming. We have weeks of advance notice that these things are going to happen, and yet people are doing nothing. And then when the power goes out, it's the power company's fault. Well, that could be debated to some degree, but isn't it also your fault for not going out and taking responsibility and making sure you have an alternate source of power, an alternate source of water, or what have you, and making sure that, at least for a short period of time, you can provide for yourself? Yeah, there is some responsibility on the power companies for some of these grid failures. But their responsibility never replaces your responsibility for yourself and your own family. And unfortunately, we live in a country where too many people think they should be taken care of by somebody else. They think the government should be taking care of them. They think the power company should be taking care of them. They think their neighbor down the street should be taking care of them, but they don't take care of themselves. this is an ongoing problem that we're gonna be seeing, I believe. We've seen 3 separate attacks now. This is 3 attacks on substations. They're slightly different each time, but they're still attacks. And, you know, once could be a fluke. Twice could be a coincidence. 3 times you're starting to see a pattern. There's a pattern emerging. So be prepared for these patterns, these attacks to continue. You need to take it upon yourself if you haven't already. And a lot of you preppers out there have already taken these steps. So I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but a lot of you already have taken these steps. There's a lot more that haven't. So for those of you that haven't done this, look at this storm. Look at what people are going through. Assess your preps, assess the weak points and the gaps in your preps, and fill them accordingly. I mentioned this before. Use this storm and any storm or any incident going forward as an opportunity to assess your preps and figure out where your gaps are, where your weaknesses are, and how to fortify those. I believe this will happen again. We've started seeing a pattern here. I believe that pattern will continue, and it's always going to happen when people are most vulnerable, when the grid that's being attacked is going to be most vulnerable. So don't rely on the government. Don't rely on the power company or your local governor or what have you. Don't rely on somebody down the street or somebody across the country. Take responsibility for your own life and your own well-being. I mean, this is your responsibility as much as anybody's. So be aware that this is happening, can continue to happen possibly, and take steps accordingly, folks. Take this as a warning. If you haven't been affected by this, take steps accordingly. As I've said, you know, these attacks are happening now when people are already having to deal with rolling blackouts and energy companies are demanding consumption reduction. So we're already seeing a strain on a fragile system, and people are suffering because of it. And now these attacks are happening. Attacks like these are always going to happen in these vulnerable moments. So you have to make sure you are not vulnerable as best as you possibly can. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. That's all I've got this morning. I hope everybody's staying warm this weekend and had a great holiday, had a great Christmas. I'll have more videos out as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate you guys watching. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, folks, keep prepping, stay safe, take responsibility for yourselves and your families, and get things done. Be ready, folks. Anyway, I'll catch you later.